Goofy Historians is the funnest place to learn about history. Or is it the funniest?
Welcome, everybody. This is a humorous history podcast, and we are the Goofy Historians. Today, we're going to finish up with Alfred the Great. Last time, we talked about Alfred the Great's childhood. We talked about Alfred before he was great, as it were. How he loved books, how he visited Rome as a child and met the Pope, how he visited France also as a kid and visited with the grandchildren of Charlemagne and got to see how a real kingdom was supposed to be like. And how he was the youngest of four brothers and wasn't even really supposed to be king. But then, when he did become king, how he faced off against the Vikings who were attacking from all sides. And how at one point he had to run away to the marshes and invent toast. Okay. So if you didn't see that video, you got to go back and watch that.
So he ran to the marshes, he invented toast.
He invented
and years
toast.
later, Francis of Spain invented French toast.
That's right. That's right. So go back and watch that video if you haven't seen it already. But we left off as Alfred was becoming great. He had temporarily liberated Wessex, which was his southernmost kingdom, from the Vikings. And he knew it was a temporary thing. He knew that the Danes were going to return. So this is where we're going to get into the discussion of whether Alfred the Great was really great, because it turned out he had almost 20 years and he didn't sit on his laurels. He got to work. Like I said, he kind of knew how a kingdom was supposed to operate, and he went to work on making Wessex the center of England, as it were. So I'm going to argue that he created the foundations of what would be the United Kingdom, as opposed to the Last Kingdom from Netflix. So Joseph, where do you want to start? I want to talk about some of the things like he was a city planner. He started the British Navy. He was did a lot with writing. So I don't know where you want to start. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's important to say that, after Chippendale, he did have the final battle, a big battle at Edinburgh with the Vikings, and they withdrew to a fortress and they were sieging and so Alfred never actually won. They made a strategic realpolitik, right? He paid off the Vikings again to leave, and he gave them all of England, except a little slice of Mercia for his daughter. He wrote off all of England except Wessex, right? So in a sense, he sold out all of England. But in that, he created the seed, right? Because he couldn't take all of England. It was realpolitik. He knew he wasn't going to actually take it all, not in his lifetime, but he set the foundation for his sons and his grandsons to be finally taken over by other Vikings in the Norman invasion. But he did create that kernel, which was, there was nothing like that since the Romans left, right? I don't think he created anything. I mean, the Romans created the roads, right? And the Romans, had writing and everything. And they certainly had religion, but he suited it. He made it work for the Anglo-Saxons, right?
And he named everybody
in a 20-year peace where he wasn't actually fighting everybody.
Right. And he had some great kids, and they were all named Ethelred, Ridge. Even the daughter was named Ethel something. So his daughter became queen of the territory right above Wessex, which was called Mercia, right? And Alfred had married a lady from Mercia, so they were pretty much eating out of the same plate there for a while. But yeah, so his kids and his grandkids um, you know, they didn't miss a beat, really. I mean, they kept things going. But let's
Yeah, but they
talk
didn't
about
have as good as they didn't have as good as press as
as
Alfred
Alfred.
did, right? Alfred had great press. I mean, he wrote his own autobiography basically,
Right, but
or
they
it was
wouldn't.
ghostwriting. He ghost wrote his autobiography.
Right, but they would not have had anything to build on if it wasn't for Alfred, your grandpa. So let's talk about some of the stuff
Yeah,
he,
and
he so what was the state of Christianity or the Catholic Church in that time? Now the Vikings had did a number on a lot of the monasteries and stuff. So after they were liberated from the Vikings, Alfred kind of rebuilt the monasteries and started writing. He had this the we talked about it a little bit last time, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. He's the one who really started that, and he would send like copies of it to all the monasteries everywhere with this like a stick with a jewel on it. It was like this fancy jewel. um it's like, here's your book and here's a jewel, and one of those jewels is still in the it's in the British Museum in London. So that's cool. It's kind of a real thing from Alfred's time. And you got to remember, like we talked about last time, this was in the 8th century, so in the 700s.
no, it
So
was the 9th century, 800s. But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it was
sorry.
860, 870. Yeah, but 100 years more or less. But
Oh yeah, 848.
so I mean,
Died in
and
899.
yeah, 899. So he had like 150 years before the Normans showed up.
Right. We're probably going to do another whole show on the Normans. It's just so interesting that the Vikings that left, um, you know, became the Normans, and then those guys were Christians to the extreme and ended up going on crusades. So it's just crazy. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
so, but what else did Alfred do? Is Alfred great or not? He started the British Navy. The British still think of Alfred
Well,
as the father of the Navy. But this was
I think that's mythology. I think that's mythology. He made a boat. He got a boat. He
well, the
said, "This is
Vikings
our
are
navy," and then he put it in the water and it sunk or something. And I mean, it's so yeah. So one thing, us go back to even before his attempt at the navy, which at least he tried, right? I mean, the Anglo-Saxons were Vikings before they became Anglo-Saxons, right? But they gave up seafaring, right? As soon as they got here and planted crops, so they forgot. They're basically Vikings that are Christian, and not like Jesus Christian. These are like Constantine, Charlemagne, type Christians who, Christianity at spear point, right? I mean, you see, a bunch of natives, and you say, "Here's the water, here's the sword. What do you want?" If I was you, I'd take Christianity. So it wasn't a peaceful Christianity, but it was a literate Christianity, right? So they sort of took the Viking ethos of manliness and sort of coated it over with some literature. But I think the main thing is that before, when the Anglos and the Saxons were fighting each other, they fought sort of on a prearranged plan. They fought during the fighting seasons because they were farmers who fought, right? As opposed to the Vikings, who were fighters who also farmed when they got home for a little bit. So basically, it was based on a militia system, right? So all they had, it was like us if we were relying upon the Proud Boys to protect us, right? And who knows if they were going to protect us or turn on us, right? So what the main thing I think um, Alfred did to stop that was he created an army, a standing army, and he created these burgs, and he created roads connecting the burgs, right? And he created a communication system, right? So when the Vikings showed up, right, by the time anybody knew they were there, they had grabbed the loot and they were gone, right? Even when they created their great Viking army, they run into places that people couldn't respond. So Alfred told the Proud Boys, just to step down, right? And we're going to create a real army, and we're going to create wall cities. He created. It was the beginning of truly the castles of of England, where they could go behind, and it was very systematic. How many men needed to man a wall, right? And how distant they were, so that any castle could get to any other castle within one day. So you can't have these random Vikings coming and attacking, because within a day they'd be surrounded by this trained Anglo-Saxon army. So pretty much put an end to random Viking attacks. Right. Well,
Let me ask you.
you could.
Let me ask you a
So
question.
even if they decide to come back, you really could.
So let me ask you a question. So they started building castles everywhere to fortify their area. Now, were these real castles that we think about that were built out of stone? Or were they these wooden forts? Because the Vikings started building these wooden forts everywhere. And I was thinking, a wooden castle? Come on. How do you not just catch that on fire and have it burn? So was Alfred building things
So
out of
actually,
stone?
all of the castle building, the castle building era in Europe was contemporaneous with the Viking attacks. That's basically why we have castles in Europe, because the Vikings come, you can't fight them. Let's build a wall. They can't stay because they don't know how to do siege warfare. They don't know how to siege. You can't carry enough supplies on your little boat to siege a castle. So it was around the 800s up into the 900s. We have everybody's building castles, right? Everybody on any type of river or water system has castles, right? And so now, so it's not like Alfred's creating something new, but he was there. He hung out with the grandsons of Charlemagne, right? He hung out with the Pope, right? He hung out with all these people who knew how to, build castles, how to protect themselves, how to get roads connecting them, and create a defense system and early warning systems. So, and if he hadn't done that, it wouldn't matter, because let's face it, Christianity as Christ taught it doesn't work, right? If someone comes and slaps you on the cheek and you give the other cheek, they're just going to take your wallet, right? It doesn't work. But this type of Christianity, if you slap my cheek, I'll beat the shit out of you and I'll take your wallet. That works, and it creates a foundation going forward.
Okay, so just for clarification, so Alfred was living in a real castle with stone walls. That's all I wanted to know. Because my next question is my next question is more important. I don't know why you started going off on hating about wood. I was going to ask a question. So Alfred's living in a stone castle, like a proper castle, right? So my next question is, so it sounds to me like he's a real king. Pretty great. There's only one thing I need to know, whether or not that he's actually great or not. Now, did Alfred the Great have a jester? A court jester? Did he have a jester? Because if he didn't have a jester, I'm not so sure it was that great. Because really, if I was a king, I would definitely have a jester, and I'd have some bards.
He did have his nephew. Remember the nephew in The Last Kingdom on Netflix?
Yeah, his nephew.
I think that was about as close as a jester. I don't think Alfred may have been great, but he didn't have a sense of humor. So I think how could you have a sense of humor? He ruled. He actually put the latrine on his throne, right? So he ruled from the latrine, man. He was a miserable guy, right? He wasn't happy. So I don't think a jester would have worked. Probably his sons and grandsons probably had gestures.
Well, Henry VIII had a jester.
By the time you get to Henry VIII, yeah. But they were Normans, right? They were from Norman stock. So they're French. So the French always have a sense of humor.
But that's the best thing.
Anglo-Saxons, I don't know. I don't think Alfred was very funny.
That's true.
Sometimes
That's
when he
true.
started,
He was a very serious guy. He would not have even entertained having a jester. He was too solemn. So yeah, I don't know. I just now I'm torn whether or not I think Alfred the Great was great or not. Because
I think Alfred is great as a local hero. You know, like you have like local football stars and like your Mountain View City high school football star. Yeah, he was like the best football player ever coming out of Mountain View High School, man. But that doesn't mean anything. He wasn't major league. He wasn't going to go into, the pros. But what he was great at is having progeny that knew what to do with what he did. He was lucky, right?
yeah.
He was lucky in that he had a son and a grandson. I think it fell apart after the great grandson, but he had like two generations after him that had long enough reigns and knew enough to do something with what he had, right? So they should call him Alfred the Lucky. But he was a local hero for sure. I don't think he saved Wessex, but to me he was scary just because he's so religious, and he created a theocracy, and he ended up having all his nephews killed because they were the ones who were true heirs to the throne, not him, and he knew it. Right? He knew if he kept so so the king became untouchable, which is sort of cringy, right? I think
Well, it's sort of
sometimes I really like him. He's like, but other times he's just cringy, and the English attitude towards him is like total cringe. It's like, ooh, it's like, come on, you
right.
guys.
But what other choice?
He may be
What
great, but
other
he's not a saint, right?
what other choice was there for him? Was he going to be like, well, all of a sudden I'm going to be Spinoza and not believe any of this and be like an atheist? It's like that was not an option. So anyway, Alfred was what he was. And so I think that really what we're going to do is move on and talk about probably the Normans, because I guess that's a good transition to where we're going with this, which is eventually, hopefully, the French Revolution. I'm not sure when this year we'll get to that, but did you have anything else to say about Alfred the Great, or can we go ahead and put a nice bow on this and call it a wrap?
No, yeah, one thing I think that is important, that is he is great, I think, is that even though it was mostly religious, he did create an educational system, a literate educational system in England, which I think is great, right? So, and eventually England was united over him, which actually made it easier for the Normans to take over because they could take over one country instead of hundreds of little Anglo-Saxon cities. But he did do that, and he admitted that you're never going to get these people to speak Latin, right? Rome is gone. Rome is over. It's us. We're going to have to start writing in Anglo-Saxon, right? Not Latin, right? But the other note is that over 600 of our most common words in English are not Anglo or Saxon, they're Danish, like hand, the, this, those, law, outlaw. All of our basic words are Danish, not Anglo-Saxon. So the Danish never went away, and I think just the linguistic aspect and the DNA aspect of it shows that a lot of the mythology that the Anglo-Saxon chronicles are saying is not true because the Danes came, they stayed, and obviously they weren't all Vikings. Most of them were farmers. They intermarried with the Anglo-Saxons. Unlike when the Anglo-Saxons pushed the Celts to the Celtic fringe, the Anglos and the Danes actually intermarried, and then we have the English, and then the Normans came, right? And you rebooted the whole thing, right? So you have like a French on top of the Danish on top of the Anglo-Saxon. That's what makes the English language, and we would have never known that unless little Alfred, sitting on his latrine, actually wrote stuff down, and he did. And I think that's great. He translated stuff from Latin into Anglo-Saxon so that people could actually read it. Good job. I think he's great in terms of that, even beyond a local hometown hero. He was actually great. So yeah, I'll give him. I don't think he was a Charlemagne, or I don't think he was a Cyrus the Great, or I don't think he was Alexander. But man, as a local hero, he was great. And the English should be proud of that.
Well,
Not as proud as they are. Not as proud as they are, but they should be proud of it.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give him 4 out of 5 stars. I would have given him 5 stars, but no jester.
Goofy Historians is the funnest place to learn about history. Or is it the funniest? Does history repeat itself? Not really. But sometimes it kind of rhymes.